They told me for years there was no money in podcasting. Well, they were all wrong.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the audio series, because the audio series is very interesting. I've met a lot of life coaches who do and do not have podcasts, but never someone who has their own audio series. So why an audio series as opposed to, like, I guess, an audio book or even a podcast?
Yeah. I don't like to direct people on what I think they should do with their life. I don't like to quote other. I mean, I love learning from books, and obviously I'm like, all of us are just walking greatest hits of things, every experience and everything we've read. But in my experience, storytelling is almost a sideways way to bring in a new concept. And in this way, do you remember being in kindergarten or first grade or even younger than that with your parents, where your parents or a teacher would read a book to you?
Yes.
Okay. And you at least get to figure out your imagination, unless the teacher shows you pictures, you get to use your imagination to picture what your version of the character looks like, what the circumstances and the surroundings look like. And while I like to create some of that with at least the sound effects that I am very picky about and the music that I co-produce with my studio engineer, I do that to invoke a certain feeling for the stories, but I want people to be able to get into the stories themselves, because even if during one 5 to 10 minute story, they get out of their head and into kind of the big picture of life, like somebody else's situation, they're going to find options and choices that they get to make by hearing that. And some of the stories end with kind of mysterious. Some of them, they're not all happy, like motivation. Inspiration can also be like a drug we hit, feel good for a while. But I really, really think it's important to get people to think and feel their own lives while hearing other people's stories. So I believe in storytelling, and I think a lot of audiobooks can be a lot of information, and podcasts can be someone talking at you or even talking with you through conversations with other people. But to me, storytelling is just it's an ancient but also very, very effective way of getting ideas out into the open.
Okay. I can rock with that. It is, I mean, podcasting is a form of storytelling. Don't get me wrong, but
Sure.
your audio series, is very well produced. That was the first thing I noticed. I was like, this is the real deal. Like the music, the sound effects, the editing, like you can tell it took a lot of time. It took probably a lot of money to make. So I can definitely understand the idea of putting it behind a paywall. So I'm not criticizing that at all, because it is a very impressive piece of work. And I do appreciate the storytelling angle, because I'm a storyteller. I can definitely consider myself a storyteller. And I do one day want to do the level of production you do with the audio series. 1,000%. So I guess, how would you describe it what's the elevator pitch for the audio series?
The elevator pitch is, these are basically transformational, self-improvement audio stories that empower the busy, those of us that are restless, and those of us that feel stuck. I empower them with fresh choices.
Okay.
And I will say too that it's fun self-help that gets you out of your head and into the big picture of life.
So who's the target audience?
Anybody that, like I always talk about people being busy, because a cage of priorities, a cage of schedules, a cage of things we think we should do, obligations, I guess is a good word for it. People that feel really, really busy, and not that they, like, you could be sad about that, you could be upset about that, but know that there's something out there for them, but they don't know how to get out of the roles and the things they agree to. And I also say, like, people that feel restless, like kind of itchy, like there's more to life than just feeling good at the bottom of a glass of something, turn into sex for something, like all of the ways that we cope and we use drugs, things that we make us feel good, and the instant gratification pieces, that there's just this little voice or a little itch that tells you there's something more. And then people that I hear from a lot of people, like, I feel stuck in my situations, but when I hear these, sometimes it brings on conversations that they have with their significant other or other people. Sometimes even for that moment while they're driving in their car and listening, it makes them feel like they're not in their head. They're not feeling stuck in those moments. So the busy, restless, and stuck are for who they are. Because when I first started, talking about these albums and marketing them, I'm like, they're for everybody. And I still believe that they are. Everybody will get something from them, but I pinpointed down to those three were the themes I kept hearing when doing, market research interviews with people who enjoyed the albums.
Yeah. Saying, oh, it's for everybody. It's like, well, yeah, duh. But like, it needs to be more targeted. Like, this podcast is for anybody who has or is interested in starting a podcast, right? Because like, I like to talk to people who are interested in stories and storytellers, and some. That's the Ambiguous podcast solution. This one's just people I find interesting. That's just this is a me podcast, right? This is for me. A lot of podcasts for me. I podcast very selfishly. The Ambiguous podcast solution is for people who have or are interested in starting a podcast, but my target audience is podcasters. They can listen to me like, oh, that's a great idea. I'm going to do that. Or they can listen like, oh, that's a great idea for a podcast. I'm going to start something similar. So you definitely but yeah, anybody can listen to it. You want anybody to listen to it, but I like that it is a little more targeted.